guys, it's May from Markets with May, and today we are going to talk about actually all this week we're going to talk about meme stocks. Today we're going to do GameStop. Tomorrow we're going to do Carvana after the CPI number comes out, and hopefully you guys will tune in and enjoy these episodes. Now, before we get into that, we always say past performance is not indicative of future returns, and we always set up kind of the context of the markets and what we're seeing. Um, Also, want to give a shout out to Gurula.net, Gurula.app, who I always collab with. Money goes where it is treated best is their tagline. And we basically, all of us that support Gurula are just trying to give real information to people so that they can be prudent investors and make their own investment decisions. All right, here's the indices. This thing has been dancing on flat all day long, which is fascinating because the economic data that's coming out. You've got oil also dancing right around here. You can take a look at the pump and you can see that this thing, oil has been pushed down for the holiday season. There's lots of political reasons why that might be the case. Certainly, Mrs. Yellen in her article suggested says much, but I don't want to be conspiracy theory. There's no reason to do it. Still, winter is coming and we shall see fairly shortly, even with the Russian cap. Let's look at this. Tesla getting clobbered. I mean, we shall see, but truly, if he gets that loan from Morgan Stanley and that is a collateralized loan, Tesla is going to lose one of its biggest possible sellers that the shorts have been all over. So that should be an interesting one way or the other, because on a valuation basis, when I review the bull and bear case, I don't know that I feel the bear case has really been able to prove itself in any kind of meaningful way to me anyways, but there's plenty of episodes. Take a look on what we're thinking there. And so then we've got economic data out this week, and there certainly is some pretty important ones. We got CPI tomorrow, bright and early at 8:30. That's part of the reason why we're going to rehash Carvana on the other side, because one of the key components in CPI that we always look at is what's going on in auto sales. And we got this really weird thing between new and used car auto sales. Other than that, I think a lot of folks, you can see that the forecast is actually below the previous 0.4 uptick that we had in CPI. I think most people are thinking that's going to come from gas, and I think they're right. But we'll see what happens with all the rest of the energy component of CPI, because it's really X food and energy. It's not just X food and gasoline prices. So you got utilities that comprise that and some other things. But nonetheless, this is going to be a big deal for the numbers tomorrow. And then we've got the FOMC, we got the Fed funds rate announcement. He signaled pretty hardcore 50 basis points, and then he'll come out and have a conference on it. So you really almost have to hold your breath through until Thursday, because remember, the market oftentimes will react to that initial announcement one way or the other, and it may give it all back the next day. So watch very closely on Thursday. Realize as well that Friday is the monthly options expiration. So this is nothing but volatile as we cruise into the holiday season. It's not going to be fun, or it will be fun depending on what side your trades are on. Okay, let's talk about GameStop. And I really want to put this story in context a little bit, because, one of the things that I've noted with the meme stocks is it's really hard to get the answer to basic questions on the story, given all the other excitement around it, opinions, emoticons, whatever you want to call it. So I really wanted to kind of lay out these stories in ways that at least you, as a new investor coming in, could ever hope to take a look at it, because the fact is a lot of them have been massively brutalized, and the negative press almost has nothing to do with what's going on in the company one way or the other. GameStop, sorry, I got planes overhead because I am in an area where there's a lot of parachuters. Give me a second. All right. GameStop is really one of those meme stocks that is just really, unfortunately, took off in a way that was a little bit crazy last year. It is absolutely beloved by the shareholders, and it has been in the middle of a turnaround since 2019. And if you're going to do research on it, you will actually have to read that first 10K and then work your way forward. The biggest probably inflection point of the turn was 2021, when this gentleman took over the helm of the chairmanship. This is Ryan Cohen. He actually founded Chewy and then resigned as CEO in 2019. Now, I am still hunting down details of this, but typically that's normal. After you sell your company, you stick around for a little bit and then you go do something else with your life. Since he founded it in 2010, there's almost a decade of time that he spent. working on one company. He's still a young man. I think he's like 37 or something. Anyways, at any rate, he became chairman of the board, put there clearly by private equity, because two of their board seats is private equity. And the company has really just been turning itself through. Now, because of what happened during the meme period, a lot of their balance sheet has been cleared up. So any haters that are still in this name, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Nonetheless, there are some things that wouldn't necessarily make you crazy excited. For me, because of the nature of how I invest, this is kind of a hold. It's a hold for me, but I would never be necessary given these financials. It would be really hard to be a hater on this name. So let's just be really clear about what's up. In the last quarter, just like everything else in consumer, they took it on the chin. Revenue down 9%, but gross margin was down in line. So they didn't actually lose money on their inventory. They just sold it at the price it was supposed to be. And some of this had to do with part of what the turnaround story was, which was we got to change up how we're doing inventory and how we're actually running this business. So that is actually, for some people, a positive that this company is starting to turn the corner. Now it's still running a loss, as you can see. And so we're going to have to check the cash flow statement and also the balance sheet to understand what's going on there. But once you check it, you're going to be kind of impressed in some ways, especially if they are able to get other waves of their strategy on through as we enter 2023. All right. Let's look at cash flow from operations. Digital asset impairments. This is in addition to cash. This actually has a little bit to do with the NFT business, but before you get too freaked out, and also before you listen to the call from not this quarter, but the quarter previous, and realize that they did have some interaction with FTX, don't get too excited there, because most of that is addressed in the 10K fairly clearly, which we'll get to in just a second. So we got digital asset impairments. We have him buying up more inventory for the holiday season. It's not as ridiculous as it was the year before. So we are seeing improvements there. I'll show you the inventory numbers in a second. And then we've got the accrueds getting a little bit higher, which to me, it's not the greatest, quite frankly, because these kind of cancel each other out. So we are still running operating cash flow negative. That is going to have to be fixed. That in theory is what they're going to do in 2023. In practice, we'll just have to see how it goes. That's part of the reason why for me, it's a hold right this second. Okay. It's not a sell. It's not a, I think this GameStop thing is a total joke. No, it's just, this is clearly what you'd expect to see. But for me, it's too early for me in the type of investment that I do. Okay, let's go to the balance sheet. This actually is pretty good. Fair and square, this is pretty good. I double checked this marketable securities line. It's very clear what it is. It's mostly US govies and they show it clear as day. So this actually should be added back to cash. So we're about $1 billion in cash is really the right way to think about this market securities line. If you're new to reading this stuff, you do always have to double check when you see a line item like that. Merchandise inventories are a little bit down versus last year, but definitely increased from the beginning of the year. So that's part of the turn, right? And then the other thing that you want to know is that they did, there was a bunch, ignore my notes, they're almost illegible, I can understand that. But essentially they had an acquisition of Immutable X and Digital World. And in those two acquisitions, they got a bunch of intangible assets, which are essentially NFTs. But guess what? They sold most of those on out. So they don't have very much NFT exposure as far as that goes. They don't have zero, but they don't have very much of it that it would even matter here or even in the income statement in kind of meaningful way. There's a little bit, but it's very clearly laid out. So you can't even be like, oh, there's some hidden whammy. No, I don't think there is, given what I read and what I heard and what I saw. Okay, so as a result, the reason for me it's a little bit funky. Oh, sorry, last thing on the balance sheet, long-term liabilities is very low relative to how much cash they have. So this is actually a clean balance sheet. And if he can just get around the corner and starting to get profitable and moving forward, then that will be a big thing. I unfortunately didn't put all of the management changes that they had, but the management changes do include bringing in a bunch of people from Amazon that do have the right resume, including the CEO who was brought in. So I do think that they have the right merchandising team for this. And as much as NFTs are no longer a piece of the business, I don't think it's a complete failure that they went into that direction because, I mean, we'll have to see how all of it plays out. But there is something to be said in a relationship between the gaming business and what NFTs for gaming potentially have to be. Now let's go back and let me just double check I didn't miss anything. Yeah. So for those of you that really need to look it up, this is there's a whole section here that I went through. If you go through it, you should discover about the same thing I did. And with that, I'll go ahead and hit the stop button and we can take any questions on GameStop. Ooh, sorry, I'm hitting like every button but the right button. Second. Goodness, stop share. Hey, David, sorry.
Oh, hi, me. Okay,
Ow.
GameStop. Are their sales going up?
No, it's actually been flat to slightly down on the October quarter. I think the real thing will be to see what happens in the next in this holiday quarter. So they built up a little bit of inventory just so that they have enough for the holiday selling season. So really, right this minute, there's a couple ways that you have to think about GameStop. First, you have to think that the consumer is still excited to buy the type of inventory that GameStop has, which I don't think it's the worst call out there, so it's possible that they come in okay for the holiday season. The second thing is that you have to be willing to kind of handle through. If you own GameStop and you're like, I don't know what to do right this minute, you have to know that it's going to take 1 or 2 quarters to see what they end up strategically doing. Because right now, most of the focus from 2019, 2021 with this Ryan Cohen coming in, et cetera, has been about getting those financials to a place where it's kind of a clean slate. Well, all right now it's more or less a clean slate. You're not quite profitable, but it's easy to see how you would get there in about a quarter or two. You get to flat essentially. So you've got a great brand. You've got this crazy base of people that supported you in the most ridiculous meme way during 2021 and 2022. How are you going to monetize that? We're going to need another quarter to see how that actually happens. So that's what you're betting on if you're owning the stock. For me, it's a little bit too hard because I just don't know enough about how they do that. So I think next quarter they're going to have to speak to that. The other thing that kind of bothers me from the way that I invest and the way that I look at it is that earnings call is just way too short. It's like 8 minutes and there's no investor questions on it. So that tells me that in order to really get good intelligence on this, you're going to have to be institutional grade, going in there, talking to management in a very different way. I'd like to see them change that behavior. That is a very common behavior, though, when a company is going massively through turnaround. Another company that does that right now is Carnival Cruise Line. They don't even have a call.
Right. Okay. Are they digital? Aren't they? I mean, they were physical stores. I still see them in malls, but
That's the right way to think about it. They're moving most of their business is now digital, but they are, and I wish they gave that breakout too, by the way, just in case someone from GameStop is taking notes on Mailing's wish list for Christmas in the future. But yeah, I wish they would give the breakout a little cleaner in their 10K. They do not, but yes, they did mention that quite a lot of their sales is going digital, as you mentioned. And also, but again, yes, they do have stores. There's even one in my podunk town. You know what I'm saying?
okay. Are they on your 5 under 5 list?
No, they are not, because they don't necessarily meet my criteria. But I wanted to give,
Okay.
since there's just very few exciting, when I look at the news and all these meme stocks, I think it's a real shame because the street is not something that everyone has access to. And all the other news flow, I don't want to be a hater on it, but it's more trading oriented, such that if you were stuck with this thing and you bought it at its highs, it would be really hard for you to get anything about the actual company itself, short of going through the financials yourself. And if you don't have that skill set, it's really not fair because there's not someone to walk you through it. That's why this week is dedicated to the meme people.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Well, I think everybody, you just got to be really careful going into tomorrow because we have all of that crazy that's coming out in the next 2 days. And we'll kind of end it short there. Bye, guys.